Hello. So let's talk about IlluGen's interface. So let's begin with a new project. And now you see you're gonna have four tabs. You're gonna have the view tab, the node graph, the node details, and then the timeline. So let's begin with the view. And as of now, you can see why it's grayed out. Well, that's because first we're in 2D view, and then we got no 2D texture to display. So let's jump to 3D, and then now you can see there's a plane, a default plane being assigned there, and then some basic lighting. That's because of the renderer node over there. We won't need it for now. So you have the 2D view, 3D view, and then let's just add a shape node. This one is gray for 2D stuff, 2D shapes. So let's add one. And then you see, well, this texture being displayed here, but since we're doing 2D, well, you should go into the 2D view. So just go back to 2D view, and then now you have it. So in that view, you have options related to the, well, 2D view. You have the outline, pretty self-explanatory, and then you have the toggle texture tiling to check if your texture is actually tiling or not. Right now in this example, well, it doesn't really works that much, but it's more about when you use a noise texture, for example. So double click on the node or click on the output of the node you want to see the result, to see what's gonna be displayed. Click on it, remove the outline, and then as you can see, it is actually tiling, right? What else? Well, those are the modes. I just don't care about them at all for the moment. So let's jump into the node graph. So as you can see, we already added a basic shape node and a noise node. Those two tabs, those two nodes are the ones, some of the nodes you're gonna use like a whole lot. So let's go into the shape node first. So you have the shape by default, but and then after that you have the details panel, the node details panel, where you got a bunch of parameter exposed to basically sculpt the shape in any way you want. So let's say for example you want a ring. Well, what can you do about that? Well, you would first check the inner fillings parameter, and then you can drag the slider over there like this, and then you can play with the intensity remap curve to shape it the way you want. So we want a ring, so we would have something like this, right? Then scale it down to about 90%, and there you have it. You have a ring texture, the kind of texture you use a lot in VFX, like to make shock waves, or even a, what do you call that, a distortion by making it a normal map, and then like so you would play with the intensity to adjust how strong you want the distortion to be inside Unreal Engine 5. And then I already showed you, well, two concrete cases. You have a texture over there, ring texture, and then you can convert into a ring distortion by making it a normal map. So let's just not get ahead of ourselves too fast. And then what else can you do with all this? Well, imagination is your limit, but for now we can save this as a as a preset, but actually there's already one pre-made by VFX. So there you go, run square, and there you have it. So that's pretty much it for this tab over there. So what else can we do? Well, you have the timeline overview where you would add keyframes to animate any kind of parameters. Well, for now there's actually nothing. That's because, well, you have to go into this nose details panel, and then you check those rounded toggle, which are actually the override. So you have the timeline override, and you have pin override, and then of course the randomized override. But honestly, I don't use the randomized at all for now. I mainly use the timeline override to, well, if I want a specific animation over a certain length, that's the option I would choose. So how do I do that? I click once, and now you have these parameters, the position, that have been exposed into the timeline. So you do shift click to add a key, or double click, and then yeah, choose the frame at which it ends, 80, one in between, from what position in the Y, like so, and then I don't know, 10%, then back to 0, and then isolate the looping region. Right, click on this option right there, and then just adjust. There you go, and there you have it. Simple up and down motion, and that's applicable to any kind of parameter you have over there. Right. Oh, and one other thing, you have the shape type. You can, switch if you want to have this or a regular star. Alright. Well, if you're familiar with Substance Designer, well, it's pretty much the same thing, but better. And yeah, let's talk about the other override, which is the pin override. So let's just delete this, remove from timeline. Alright, stop, and press R to reset, spacebar to play. So what else? Well, you have to toggle this pin override twice, a second time, and then now, as you can see, we have these same position parameters. That is now a pin that is available. Then you can drag in, and then since it's contextual, it's gonna give you the specific nodes that can be attached, that can be linked to this. So now you have the modulators. So basically, it's a procedural, I guess, animation. So right now it's doing nothing. Well, that's because the timeline is on pause. So press spacebar like this, and then let's say I don't want it to be animated into the Y, so I'm just gonna set this one to none, and there you have it. You can play with the range. You can also play with the frequency. There you go. Phase, but this one is not really useful for this. Let's just use a oscillator. I like this one. It's an up and down motion. It's a sine. And then what, on the x-axis? So this one's none. This one's none. There you go. You can even choose if you want a saw, noise, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You have the pace, frequency, phase, and you see how the curve is behaving over there. Well, that's all nice and dandy, but not very useful for this kind of stuff. Well, let's just stop over there, reset, and then how about this one? Maybe we can use the scale. Alright, so I'm not sure why there's an arrow over there and then you have to drop it down so you are able to see the scale that can be overridden. I don't know why. So let's just go back there, scale, pin, oscillator. Let's set this texture to non-tiling over there, no tiling, and then set the scale range from, let's say, 60% to the max is 100%. And there we go. The key frequency. How about this? This. Like this. Sides. What else can you do? Well, for this you can also add a UV node. No, sorry. And then you can have something like this. Roughness, like so. Scale. You can even add a modulator for this one. So twice, drag the pin out, cycle, and then, well, frequency, and there you have it. Oh, one thing you should be aware of and that I use a lot, it is those toggle over there. This one is very useful because it filters out the parameters that have been modified from the rest. So let's say you want to go into a preset made by either me or provided by VFX. You go for the chain over there, don't say for this one, the chain, and then you go into this node, for example, toggle this, and then you see the parameters that have actually been modified to achieve this result, which is very nice because then you don't have like to scroll through all the parameters available and then try to figure out which one have been modified. Well, if you just pay attention, you can see that this revert arrow is being highlighted. That's because one of the parameters over there have been modified. But then again, visually speaking, it's way better to have this filter over there. Right. You even have favorites where if you have there's a specific parameter you use all the time, you can just make it a favorite. Let's say texture, tiling, favorite, and then go into the favorite tab, and there you have it. And then let's say you have another different node, geopoint shape. This one is geosweep, and let's say you favorite this one. You have also appears over there, and then it also tells you in which nodes it is from, which is very nice. And then you also have this timeline tab, where if you put an override on one of the parameters, for this one, it appears on the timeline, and then you go back there, and then you actually see the parameter that have been exposed in the timeline. Very nice. And then for the randomize, but then again, I don't use this one, but the theory, it's pretty much the same. But for the sake of showcasing, let's just do this one. 1, 2, 3. Well, not like this. So randomize, you have to shift click to activate this one. Shift click, and you see the icon is different. And now go back to the randomize tab, and then there you have it. And one more thing I like to show you, let's just go back to a new project again. Don't save. Add a noise. One noise. Okay, let's go back to, well, now I use a lot of I abuse the auto view because I often switch between 3D and 2D views, and then, well, it's easier that way. Let's just go to geo geo mask, for example. Nah, not mask, geo shapes. All right, like so. Well, it's difficult to tell right now. It's because the geo shape base shape is a plane. So let's go with a disk. All right, then I double click on it, 2D view, double click on this one, 3D view, right? So okay, so what I wanted to talk to you about is the tiling option over there. If by default you want it to be tiling, well, just leave it as is. If you don't want it, well, you can just like set to no tiling. As you can see, double click on this one, toggle the tiling view, and then as you can see, it's not tiling anymore. Tiling, no tiling. But then again, I just leave it to tile, especially for noise. You want it to always be tiling anyway. But if you don't want it to tile, what you can do is doing it on this node itself rather than the whole schematic project. So how would you do that? Well, let's just take a look at the tiling parameters you have from parent, from graph or absolute. I choose absolute, tiling, no tiling, and then that's it.